Hello and welcome to Unstressed. My name is Dr. Ron Ehrlich. My guest today is Dr. Peter Dingle. Now, Peter has spent the last 30 years as a researcher, an educator, a communicator and an author. And he has written 15 books on living well. That's quite an author. Peter helps cut through some very common health and medical myths, as you'll hear, in a very accessible and a down-to-earth way. He's no nonsense. It's a subject I feel very passionate about, and it's a subject we go into a lot in this podcast. Now, Peter has also coined the phrase the illness paradox, and we'll find out what that means, and also the illness triad, referring to three things that are common to every disease. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Dr. Peter Dingle. Welcome to the show, Peter.
Thank you, Ron. It's fantastic to be here.
Peter, I always love chatting to you. You always have so much to say, and you are a prolific author and researcher. But this latest book of yours, The Illness Paradox, can you tell us what the illness paradox is?
Well, look, it's really simple. The first part of it is that it's the way we look at illness. And whenever you get diagnosed with an illness, we've given it a name. We've called it cancer or breast cancer or prostate cancer, or we've called it heart disease or stroke or blocked arteries. And, we tend to name everything as an illness. And, they're even trying to name aging as an illness and, obesity as an illness and all these conditions that we have. And what it is that when we name it, there's a good part to it in that people recognize that they've got something. But then the bad part is we all see these illnesses as something that's going to kill us, something that's going to cause us pain and suffering, and we therefore have to look forward to a life of suffering, for the rest of our life, or it's going to kill us in the next couple of years if it's diagnosed with, cancer or something. So by giving it that label, by giving it a name, we tell people, we're being told that we have to suffer from it. And the problem with that is that with modern medicine, which is a part of this illness paradox, they don't fix the illness. They don't treat the illness in any way. They treat the symptoms. So instead of, let's say, when you've got diabetes type 1, you go to your doctor, your high blood sugar, the doctor will say, oh, you've got diabetes type 2. And the doctor will say, well, you've got to stay on these medications for the rest of your life, and what's likely going to happen is this. And they will give you some medications which will regulate the blood sugar level, and they'll do a few other bits and pieces. But what they don't do is look at the cause of the illness. They don't look at the contributing factors to the illness and how to actually resolve them. And the reality is, and I'll talk about this later, we can reverse these illnesses. It is something that we now know that we can do. But by giving it this label and then going on the medication, we get into this vicious cycle, a negative cycle, all about getting worse and sicker and taking more meds. And a part of that illness paradox is the acceptance of it. The acceptance that, oh, no, this is genetic. When people tell me it's genetic, I go, rubbish. Stop talking rubbish. We now know that about 6%, 5%, 3%, in some cases 10%, in rare cases more than that, of these diseases are genetic. Sure, your dad died of it, your brother died of it, your wife probably is dying of it, and therefore it's not genetic. It's our lifestyle and our diet. And if we recognize that, then we recognize that these things that are contributing or causing the illness can actually be stopped, prevented, reversed. We don't have to do them anymore. And as a result, we can, in every condition that I've seen, or at least understand after reading literally thousands of studies on it, can be reversed. So that illness paradox is a paradigm, a model in our minds that we have to do it, they have to get sick, and it's a part of aging, it's part of our genetics, rather than recognizing illness as a call to arms.
Yeah.
Hey.
Now there's a progression here too, isn't there? I mean, there are lots of early warning signs that happen before we. It's not like a light switch. One day you were healthy, and the next day you've got this diagnosis. And I know in your book you use the example of blood pressure as a good example of here is a disease. We need a medication for it, but there's a reason why blood pressure goes up. It's the same with digestion, our bowel movements, our reflux, our heart. So tell us a little bit about some of the early signs that people can be faced with that before we get a label on it. We'll get onto the labels in a minute, but what are some of those things and how the medicine's approaching it?
Well, look, the first signs of any illness is things that are happening and changing in your body. And unfortunately, again, with the illness paradox, we put it down to say, well, hold on, we're getting old, and we accept that. And so we go, oh, well, I'm feeling more tired, I'm feeling more run down, and I can't walk anymore, and I can't do these things. The first thing you've got to look at is what are you doing now that what were you doing 5 or 10 or 20 years ago that you can't do now? And there's simple things like exercise, Ron. I see people, they struggle to walk a couple of 100 meters and they don't recognize that. And then they go to the doctors and the doctors say, oh, you got high blood pressure, you got a blocked artery and all this other stuff. And I could tell them that. I can tell them, another classic example is simple weight gain. Another classic example, any of these changes that you're not digesting food anymore. When you were 18, you used to be able to eat just about anything. And wow, you didn't have any side effects. Now you have a little snack and you've got gastric reflux.
Yeah.
So everything that changes it along that's different than it was 10, 20, 30 years ago is the first step to say, well, you've got to do something about it. Don't just accept that it's in the genes. Don't just accept that you're getting old. I was at the gym yesterday. Ron, I met an old man. He's 88 and he's at the gym. And I tell you, he looks 60. He looks 60.
Yeah.
And he just chose a life when he was 60 to stay younger and stay healthier. And having a quick chat to him, he doesn't have any adverse health conditions. So he's just decided to do it differently than everyone else.
Yeah, and I mean exercise is a big one, isn't it? But we seem to be in a bit of a mess, don't we? I mean, the statistics are not looking great in terms of, after all these years of all the advice we've been getting, heart disease still number one, cancer on the rise, autoimmune conditions. What are some of the common myths that, or common public health messages that you feel we've kind of got wrong that may have been contributing to part of this problem?
Well, look, there are so many myths that underlie it, but the first thing is most people must realise that the medications that people are put on are to deal with the symptoms, not to fix it. And I'm not saying, hey, the medications have a role, but the first thing every doctor, every health professional should be saying is go back to the root cause. And the problem with that, going back to the root cause, is, as you've indicated, there are lots of myths out there. There are myths out there about, what we should be eating. And these are being perpetuated by, the classic vested interest, people with a lot of money involved in the big companies. My classic myth that I wrote a book on, 5 years ago was all about cholesterol. Cholesterol's bad for you. Cholesterol, it's called the great cholesterol deception. Cholesterol is one of the most important chemicals in the body.
Yeah.
In fact, recent studies demonstrated that it's the cholesterol level under the skin that determines how much vitamin D you get, not your skin pigmentation. So it's your cholesterol level under the skin. So we were told cholesterol is bad. No one has ever died from cholesterol. Now, that, of course, leads us on to the fat myth. For years, we were told, get off the animal fats, get off the saturated fats, get off the salt, and go on the vegetable oils, the margarines. And what's happened is heart attack rates have gone up.
Yeah.
And now we see that this is really a myth, perpetuated and perpetrated by large money, the sugar industry, and people had vested interest in this industry. And as a result, we now know that the fats aren't killing us. the fats are actually an essential part of our component, even saturated fats. Now, on that, I'm talking about the best ones are the things like coconut fats and avocados, any nuts and all that, and a little bit of the animal fats. And where we've gone wrong is we've been told, one of the greatest myths is these vegetable oils are good for you. Mm. And the studies are overwhelming. Stay away from vegetable oils, and the Heart Foundation supports it, margarine, all these things. But there's money involved. Mm. And when there's money involved, you've got to take a step back. In fact, there was a study just 3 weeks ago, and it was all about canola oil, and it's the first one to link canola oil, which is one of the biggest global selling oils, canola oil, with Alzheimer's, causing and linked directly with Alzheimer's and dementia.
Yeah, amazing, isn't it?
So, these are the type of things. And then, of course, there's the myth about sugar, and a lot of people are starting to understand this one. A little bit of sugar is fine. Rubbish. I'm sorry, people have to understand that the amount of sugar people consume is huge and devastating to their body and their health.
Yeah.
And again, the authorities come to a compromise with industry when they create the standards. And the World Health Organization are trying to do something about it. And they said, what we need to do is cut down the amount of sugar in our diet from 10% of our calories to 5%. And the big industry in America, the sugar and the sweet drinks like Coke and all that, turned around and said, well, if you do that, we're going to stop funding the World Health Organization, and we're going to stop funding you to do all this. So they couldn't come down with it.
Yeah.
And even 5% is too much. You're a dentist,
Music to my ears, Peter. Now listen, you also, this is a very favourite theme of mine too, as you probably know. But one of the things I really enjoyed in your book too was this illness triad, because like I said, by the time we've got a diagnosable disease, things have been going on for a while. So there's stuff going on in the background there that sets us up, that predisposes us. And you've identified 3 things that are common to all diseases. Big statement, but there it is. Can you tell us about them?
Well, first of all, as you said, these diseases have been going on for years, even decades, And you said earlier, it's not the light switch, it's the dimmer switch that's been slowly turned on, and we accept it. We put on a kilogram, blood pressure goes up a little bit, the blood sugar level goes up, and we just accept it, which is wrong. And what we now know is that there are 3 conditions, or, I could change the numbers a bit. There are 3 primary conditions that are underlying every single form of chronic illness. In fact, even acute illnesses like viruses and things too. But what we know is there's something called inflammation. And now inflammation is a normal part of your body system. It's a part of your immune system. It protects you. And when you get a virus, inflammation fires up. And it literally fights off the bacterial or the viral infection. So inflammation is critical, and it's constantly running at a really, really, really low level. But what happens with the things we do, the foods we eat, our lifestyle, or the stresses, all of these factors. And what's unique about my book is that I've actually looked at all of them, not just diet. And we've found that all of these negative things in our life are contributing to this inflammation. So rather than having this really, really, really low level, we've got this chronic upper level form of inflammation. And inflammation is found in every illness: heart attack, strokes, blocked arteries, cardiac arrest, you name it, it doesn't matter. Metabolic syndrome, high blood pressure, every single condition, every cancer. And people don't understand it. You see, there's another classic example too. You were saying, well, what are some of the messages? Look, if your body isn't healing like it used to 20 years ago, then it's a message. If you've got these conditions. So the first one was inflammation, and that's running all the time, and it's just now running at this level that's putting a huge amount of stress on the body. So there are some really simple things that you can lower inflammation with, very, very, very simple things. We just need to get that message out. The second one is oxidation, and everyone's heard of free radicals and antioxidants, and free radicals and the oxidation are literally burning parts of the cells and so on, and burning the molecules and burning the atoms, and literally causing damage as they go along the way. And what people don't understand is it might be one molecule of a chemical or something that causes oxidation or these free radicals, and it can have 10,000 chain reactions along the way. So it can cause a lot of damage. A little bit can cause a lot of damage. And the final one was acidosis. And the thing about inflammation, oxidation, and acidosis is when you've got one, you've got the other two. And when you've got the other two, you've got the other one, and they all link in. So it doesn't matter where it starts. And in fact, what we find is the vast majority of things that are antioxidant and anti-acid forming in the blood are also anti-inflammatory. So it's a win-win-win situation. So you've just got to look for these things that do all. Now, acidosis, where that becomes particularly of concern, is when you've got this is nothing to do, by the way, with acid in the stomach. This is acidosis. This is the levels in the cells in the blood, and we know from early work that cancers are formed by through inflammation, oxidation, and acidosis, and cancers actually kill all the cells around them by pumping out the acid to, literally wipe out the cells around them so that they can spread a little bit better. So if anyone's interested in preventing and even reversing some cancers, then the message is you need to look at this acidosis. But nowhere is acidosis more apparent than in the arteries. And people may have cholesterol in their arteries. No, remember, nobody's ever died of cholesterol. It's not the cholesterol in the arteries. It's the calcium plaque in the arteries.
Yes.
Now, I actually tracked this one down through, it was a fishing tank science book.
Say it again, hang on. Fishing.
Fishing, a fish tank.
All right, yeah.
Where you put your little fish and you watch them?
Yep.
And of course, what they were doing is they were finding there was all this calcium build up on the plaque, calcium plaque build up on the outside of the fish tank. And so what were some of the suggestions that they did? Well, why that plaque is building up is because when you put something alkaline like calcium in, what's called a base in science, with an acid, it forms a salt, a crystal salt. I learned that. I learned that 50 years ago, Ron. And I still remember that science lesson. Acid plus base equals salt. And so you get, when you've got a little bit of acid in your blood and you've got a little bit of calcium in your artery, then it forms a salt, and that forms a hard calcium plaque on top of your cholesterol, on top of your artery.
Yeah.
So that's what causes the problem, that hard, really rock-hard calcium crystal. Now, here's the answer. In the fish tank science, they used to just put in some calcium minerals. Some magnesium. And magnesium alkalized it a bit more and got rid of the plaque. And the same thing happens in our arteries too. Magnesium is one of the simplest ways to start unblocking the calcium that's causing the problem in your arteries. So acidosis, inflammation, oxidation, three things that go hand in hand.
Yeah.
When you've got acidosis, it's also forming inflammation and it's creating free radicals too. So all of them go hand in hand.
So this whole, the preoccupation with an alkalizing diet is really important. And you would be suggesting, well, you've mentioned magnesium, but from a dietary perspective, something to alkalize the diet?
Oh, absolutely. And the interesting thing about magnesium is it's in obviously the richest sources in all the plant foods and all your green foods. And I'm a fanatic when it comes to green foods, like your spinach and your lettuces and all those other ones, your bok choy and cabbage. The green is actually made by magnesium. So anything green is rich in magnesium. In fact, the molecule chlorophyll that a lot of people would know the name of, which gives it the green color, is the same as hemoglobin in our blood, except we have iron that makes it red, and that same molecule has magnesium in it, which gives it the green color. So it's literally the same molecule, except with a mineral changeover. And so our body needs that magnesium, so lots and lots of greens. And there's another classic example of, as we age, people start to get muscle cramps and muscle pains, and magnesium is a really simple source of that, of resolving that, and that comes in your green veggies. Other alkalizing minerals are obviously most of your nuts. I'm not talking about peanuts and cashews here. There are have occasionally, not regularly, but nuts are my superfoods, and I'm frequently at the talks I do. I'm telling people, look, if you want to overcome all illnesses. In fact, there's a growing body of research I just posted up last week all about nuts and weight loss. The people who consume the highest amount of nuts, which are rich in fats and rich in calories, have the greatest weight loss and keep the weight off.
What do you think of alkaline water? I'm not sure about that. It seems like a little bit of a trendy idea, a very simple, oversimplified. What are your thoughts?
Look, it can be, but I think there's a role for it. And if you imagine, a few thousand years ago when we hadn't polluted the planet and so on, most of your rivers and streams and creeks would be running over rocks and picking up minerals. Mm-hmm. And as a result, they'd all be a little bit alkaline, not too much.
Yeah.
I won't go into the numbers too much, but there are some alkalizing products, as they say, are 13 and 12, and that's far too high.
Yeah, because I always think the paradox there is that, sorry to use that word, but the paradox there is that we're told that squeezing a little bit of lemon into a glass of water or some apple cider vinegar prior to a meal is not a bad thing, and so the alkalizing. Anyway, I'm getting distracted with the alkalizing water thing.
The answer is, probably up to around about 8.2 or something isn't an issue. It reflects what used to happen in nature, and it also reflects the fact that most of our lifestyle and our foods we eat now, not you and me, of course, and not the listeners, but all those other people out there, have acidic food. But on top of that, the water, what they add to water, the fluoride, the chlorine, the contaminants like aluminium, heavy metals, are all acid forming.
Ironic, isn't it?
So our water is slightly acidified now.
So how do we get out of this mess by taking control? What would be the first steps that people should be taking?
Well, the first thing is to recognise that they're in charge, they're in control. You are the best person to judge how you feel and what you think is true or not. Look, GPs, our medical doctors have an important role, but they are just the educated technicians. You are the expert, and you need to do your own homework. You need to be responsible. You need to read. You need to ask questions. If you don't ask your GP 10 or 20 questions every time you see them, you're not doing your task. You're just believing that this person you see for 10 or 15 minutes a month or a year or whatever, it knows more about your health, and they don't. So the critical thing is to take responsibility, learn, read. And, Ron, there is nothing more important than health. People get caught up in finances, okay? People get caught up in the shares. People get caught up in their busy lifestyles and partying. Guess what? Once the health disappears, all that disappears.
Yeah.
So my biggest thing is take control of your health. Then realize that health isn't just about healthy eating. It's about your diet, your lifestyle, your environment that you're in also, and just as importantly, your attitude.
That's a big one.
And it's a combination of those things. Hence why, and that's again to do with the illness paradox. With we don't just have these antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, anti-acid forming nutrients in our food and in our supplements and so on. We've got to have them in our lifestyle. We've got to get rid of the things in our environment. The toxins in your personal care products and the other things that we surround ourselves with. We've got to get rid of them because they are also forming They're also, acid forming. They're causing the inflammation and oxidation, as is the stress in our life.
Yes. Well.
As is the lack of exercise or over-exercise, the elite athletes and so on, because they all contribute to it. So what we've got to do is understand it's a balance between our diet, environment, attitude, lifestyle, and each of them is as equally important in dealing with these issues.
Well, Peter, you've summed it up beautifully. I mean, I think you've answered my next question, and that was, what is the biggest challenge people face? And it's to take control and do all of those things you've just mentioned. Look, we're going to have links to your webpage and this great new book that you've just about to release called The Illness Paradox. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Ron, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I just hope I've been able to share some good information so that everyone out there listening can go out there and take control of their own health, because that's what we're here for, to look after ourselves.
Now, your health is not a light switch. One day you're healthy, the next day you have a diagnosable disease. It just doesn't happen that way. Listen to your body. Don't accept things like indigestion, reflux, constipation, diarrhea, high blood pressure, skin conditions, cramps, low energy. The list goes on. These are all signs that things aren't as they should be or as they could be. If the only thing you know about your health is your doctor's phone number, well, look, you wouldn't be listening to this podcast if that was the case. I know we're all motivated. That's why we're listening. So take control. It's a recurring theme you'll hear from me. And confusing health messages, well, that's another one you'll hear a lot about. So how do you approach taking control? Well, first and foremost, and this is sadly the case, I think we've been let down by the health authorities. I think people's interest over the last 20 or 30 years, particularly in complementary therapies like diet and supplement and a whole lot of other alternative therapies, is just a reflection of a search for control and a response to the frustration with our health system. The themes are recurring ones: nutrition, exercise, environment, attitude, how you think about things. It's actually remarkably simple. It's not a complicated story. So the triad that Peter refers to of oxidation, inflammation, and acidosis, or an acid environment, is a subject I'm going to expand on also in a lot of future blog posts and podcasts. When it comes to oxidation, I think it's worth just refreshing ourselves on this one. It's a process that drives our metabolism. In that process, free radicals are produced. They're mopped up, those free radicals are mopped up by antioxidants, vitamins and minerals like vitamin E, vitamin C, selenium, coenzyme Q10, and there are many, many others in the body. Powerful antioxidants mop up free radicals before they can do damage. That's why we're always encouraged to eat lots of vegetables with lots of colours, healthy fats, and get out in the sun. Vitamin D, it's one of the great antioxidants. Things that are high in antioxidants, as well as avoiding sugar, alcohol, processed food that produce free radicals, because it's those things that cause the overproduction of free radicals that in turn result in tissue damage and eventually, suddenly, well, I don't think suddenly, appears as a diagnosable disease. This is a process that goes on. So this all typically occurs when the body's more acidic, and it sets up chronic inflammation. That's the common denominator in all degenerative disease, which it turns out makes the body more acidic, causes more free radicals, resulting in too much oxidative stress, and so it goes on. It's an ongoing process. The bottom line is this: Peter's triad are the biochemical processes that underpin all that causes the body stress and eventually disease. So it's those things that reduce that impact, things like nutrient-dense food and exercise. In fact, exercise is a critical one. Interestingly, over-exercising can cause the production of too much free radicals, so there's a balance to be had there. Avoiding environmental and nutritional toxins, pesticides, herbicides, and all that sort of thing, we've covered that, and we'll cover that in some upcoming podcasts. Reducing what we refer to as emotional stress, that's another great podcast coming up. It's something we're going to be exploring a whole lot more. All of that's important. Above all, take control. Build resilience. That's the key message. So until next time, This is Dr. Ron Ehrlich. Be well. This podcast provides general information and discussion about medicine, health and related subjects. The content is not intended and should not be construed as medical advice or as a substitute for care by a qualified medical practitioner. If you or any other person has a medical concern, he or she should consult with an appropriately qualified medical practitioner. Guests who speak in this podcast express their own